First, not. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 firsts that weren't actually first.
We're the revolutionaries. We're like the Thomas Jefferson type.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're looking at moments, milestones, and inventions in history that are famously and wrongly considered firsts.
Is it true that the Chinese invented spaghetti?
Now think about it. Why would people who eat with sticks invent something that you need a fork to eat?
Number 10. Al Gore inventing the internet.
The Internet. The easy-to-use interactive experience located entirely on one CD-ROM.
You may have heard the story of former US Vice President Al Gore claiming to have invented the internet. And though he did help with the development and legislation of such technology, the creation of the internet actually goes back a lot further. ARPANET, the precursor to the internet, was developed in 1969 and established the first network link in history when the word login was successfully sent between UCLA and the Stanford Research Institute. In the early 70s, while working with ARPANET, Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn invented Internet Protocol and Transmission Control Protocol, which are the building blocks of the World Wide Web. Because of this, Cerf and Kahn are considered the fathers of the Internet.
By June 2007, more than 1 billion people, or about 17% of the world population, had used the Internet.
Number 9. Star Trek featuring the first scripted interracial kiss on US TV.
Where I come from, size, shape, or color makes no difference.
It's often said that the 1968 Star Trek episode Plato's Stepchildren featured the first scripted interracial kiss on American TV. Kirk and Uhura embrace and appear to touch lips. However, many contend, including William Shatner himself, that they actually turned their heads at the last second. But it's important to note that this wasn't the first interracial kiss on TV. The plays Hot Summer Night and You in Your Small Corner were broadcast on British TV in 1959 and 1962, respectively, and both featured kisses between white females and black males. It wasn't even the first interracial kiss on American TV. Nancy Sinatra kissed Sammy Davis Jr. on the 1967 special Movin' with Nancy, while the 50s classic I Love Lucy showed kisses between Lucy and her Cuban husband Ricky.
Who'd you know in Cuba?
Number 8. Johannes Gutenberg inventing the printing press.
His breakthrough came with a brilliant idea. He broke up his text into its constituent parts.
In 1439, Johannes Gutenberg gave knowledge to the world by inventing the printing press, which allowed for the mass production and dissemination of information. Today, the name Gutenberg is synonymous with publishing. However, while Gutenberg was the first to introduce the press to Western civilization, the Koreans had developed their own printing press 200 years before, with the Chinese inventing movable type printing during the Song dynasty even earlier than that. The Korean Korea dynasty had printing presses as early as 1234 through its metal movable type printing technology, and was publishing before Europe even knew it was possible. And what's most impressive of all is that books made in the 1300s are still readable today. Number 7. Betsy Ross making the first American flag.
The American flag, much?
Oh, that was a job. That was a money gig.
Betsy Ross is often credited with designing the first American flag in 1776, but this is more fable than fact. It's possible that she may have had some input on the design, but her status as creator comes only from the writings of her grandson, so we must take this with a grain of salt. According to the journals of the Continental Congress, the true inventor is Francis Hopkinson, a judge and declaration signer who was appointed to design the first official flag of the newly founded United States of America. Hopkinson began the flag design in 1776, and the Stars and Stripes were flown in 1777. Number 6. Charles Darwin developing the theory of evolution. Charles Darwin is acknowledged as the founder of evolution theory. Upon completing On the Origin of Species in 1859, Darwin popularized the concept of natural selection and became the architect for the most important scientific revolution of the last 200 years. However, it was Darwin's grandfather Erasmus who derived evolutionary theory more than 60 years before Charles. Charles simply built on his grandfather's already solid findings.
We can see him as a progenitor of the theory of evolution.
Also, at the same time Darwin was writing On the Origin of Species, fellow naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace was formulating his own theory independently of Darwin. Though Darwin got the credit, Wallace's findings were just as important, and they were published alongside some of Charles's findings in 1858.
He collected an astonishing total of 126,000 specimens of natural history.
Number 5. Disney releasing the first feature-length animated movie.
Oh, it's adorable. Just like a doll's house.
Walt Disney's 1937 classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs has long been considered the first full-length cel animated movie. Though it was the first in American history, several films from other countries came before it, including one 20 years earlier.
Sí, formar el staff de Walt Disney, por supuesto que hubiera sido muy interesante y mucho más económicamente.
The Apostle, released in 1917 in Argentina and lasting 70 minutes, is the first known animated feature film. It was a well-received satire on the state of Argentina at the time. Unfortunately, the only copy of the picture was destroyed in a fire, so the film is considered lost. The oldest surviving animated feature film is thus Germany's The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, released in 1926 and running 65 minutes long. Number 4. Microsoft, Apple, or IBM designing the first desktop computer.
This is the story of how a handful of guys launched an industrial revolution.
Most people think that Microsoft, Apple, or IBM created the first desktop or personal computer, but it was actually a well-known, albeit less renowned company named Xerox PARC that started the revolution. The Xerox Alto was released in 1973, 11 years before the Macintosh, and was the first desktop or personal computer. It operated on a graphical user interface system, or GUI, which is now the industry standard way to interact with graphical icons rather than text, as was the case with the pseudo-calculators of early computing history. GUI was adopted by succeeding computers and is used in many other portable devices, so it's virtually impossible to think of one without the other.
Anything else? Flowers. Well, what flowers?
Number 3. Alexander Graham Bell inventing the telephone.
Did you know that an Italian invented the telephone?
Alexander Graham Bell was Italian?
As the proclaimed inventor of the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell is responsible for all the electronic voice communication ever done. Except he wasn't the first. Italian inventor Antonio Meucci designed a primordial telephone, first demonstrating the product in 1856, years before Bell did in the 1870s. Meucci filed a patent caveat for a commercial telephone, meaning that a true patent would be given if the idea actually became an invention. Unfortunately, Meucci failed, and Bell snatched up the patent. And Meucci's ideas, some say. Bell patented the telephone in 1876, but not without having to fight charges that he and lawyers had defrauded the patent system and left Meucci and Elisha Gray, who invented the liquid transmitter, out of the history books.
Antonio Meucci invented the telephone and he got robbed.
Number 2. Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb. Thomas Edison is credited with many inventions that he simply improved upon rather than created. That's the case with his most famous credited invention, the light bulb. In fact, several inventors held light bulb patents before Edison, some of which dated back to 1841. One of these men was Frederick de Molins of England for his incandescent lamp. Later patents were filed by American John W. Starr in 1845, Russian Alexander Lodvogin in 1874, and Canadian partners Henry Woodward and Matthew Evans, also in 1874. Edison filed his famous patent in 1879, the same year Britain's Joseph Swan filed to patent his own commercially viable light bulb. However, all inventors owe their designs to Humphrey Davy, who created the first incandescent light in 1802. Before we unveil our number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions.
If this leg is known as A, it could be any value, This leg is known as B, could be any value, and this is C.
Tell whoever responds that we're going down by the head and need immediate assistance.
Number 1. Christopher Columbus discovering the Americas.
How do you know that we'll find land on the 28th parallel?
I don't.
Christopher Columbus is often considered the first European to discover North America, but those who know their history know that this is far from the truth. It was the Vikings, led by Leif Erikson, who landed in Newfoundland about 500 years before Columbus set sail. Also, Columbus didn't discover the mainland of North America, as is often supposed. He actually sailed around the Caribbean islands in 1492 and eventually landed on the coast of Venezuela in South America. Meanwhile, though some historians argue that Spanish slavers reached Florida before him, the European explorer Juan Ponce de Leon is often credited with discovering the continental United States of America in 1513.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.